Air Hockey for the PS1 was a budget title released by Mud Duck Productions in America and developed in Japan by Success Corp. Air Hockey is not a game that many of us will remember, forgotten by most to waste away in those massive tubs that used to hold games in Walmart and other retail stores, just waiting for one of your unsuspecting family members to pick up and buy you for your birthday or Christmas because it was only $10 and they knew you had a PlayStation. A game that wants to digitize the quintessential arcade experience of air hockey. Air Hockey was released for the PlayStation 1 on January 7th, 2003. Yes, you heard that right, 2003. By then, we had the PS2, the original Xbox, GameCube. In 2003, we got games like Knights of the Old Republic, Legend of Zelda Wind Waker, Soul Calibur 2, and Prince of Persia: Sands of Time. Mud Duck licensed and released this game far after the glory days of the PS1. Which just makes this whole game a bit of an oddity. Like, why even bother that late? Air Hockey was a budget title when it was originally released in Japan in the year 2000. So Mud Duck came along 3 years later to pick it up, go, yep, this is the game we need, and release it to the West. It is of little wonder why the game isn't really remembered by many, including myself, who didn't know of its existence until far later. The case on the front boasts of providing some fast-paced family fun, and the title, which in the US is literally just air hockey, accompanied by some art of an air hockey table. Basic, but conveys what the game is. The back of the case gives us 4 screenshots, 3 of gameplay, and 1 showing 2 of the playable characters at a versus screen. The back of the game wants to grab our attention with relive the fast-paced action of air hockey with this remake of a family favorite, with a sci-fi twist. Choose one of 4 characters, then battle your opponents in a tournament competition for the right to face Urgoz, the big boss. Can you defeat him and save the world from certain destruction? Take on family and friends in head-to-head competition. Sleek graphics and realistic physics, non-stop action make this an arcade game you can't live without. I love how 2 and 3 are just really one point and not 2 different ones. I'm also not sure how sci-fi air hockey can be, and the realistic physics, yeah, we'll see about that. The disc looks pretty nice for what it is. Basically the front cover art with a blue hue all over it. It's nice, especially since it's just a budget title and could have just been text on a silver background. Starting the game, we get thrown into a screen definitely built for arcades, despite the fact that I can find no evidence that it was ever actually an arcade game. We get the standard push start button and attract mode, which honestly is pretty nice for what it is. It showcases the characters and it gets you amped up with the whole hockey coming across the screen. The art is actually the game's strongest point and is definitely a highlight. I really enjoy the anime stylization of the characters, and it's clear that the original Japanese developers put some personal flair into a pretty tiny little air hockey budget title. I would definitely watch a 30-minute OVA about these 4 saving Earth over some air hockey. The game options are pretty basic, giving us just start and option. The 4 playable characters are Thunderboy, Space Queen, Little Mania, and Diesel Man, changing really nothing except your special abilities. The gameplay is just timed air hockey. There's no goal limit. You play the full length of time, and the player with the highest score at the end wins. It may sound a little stupid, but the game is relatively hard to control. Using the D-pad to move just feels slow and inaccurate. The CPU will often make extremely precise movements, even on easy, that would be hard to replicate for a human player. Mix that with just how slow movement is, and I found myself really just wanting to basically keep the puck on my side for as long as possible once I managed to take a lead. This let me burn out the timer and keep some wins, The game does factor in that strategy though, because if the puck doesn't move for an extended period of time, it will randomly just take off in a direction. So you do need to touch it, or attempt to score every so often if you're burning clock. Specials are your best way to get some easy scores, but they aren't foolproof and sometimes will just immediately backfire. They do play a really cool animation when used though, which is nice. Each stage does get a different look, but there's no extra effects outside of the regular power-ups that stroll through the middle of the screen. After beating the other 3 playable characters in arcade mode, you'll get to face Urfolg, according to the game, but Urgaz, according to the back of the case. Someone somewhere definitely messed up with one of these translations. He's an alien who's attempting to eat Earth alive, and the only way we have to stop him is with air hockey. On what appears to be a table made of flesh. I feel like this is the sci-fi twist that the case was warning us about, but aside from needing to save Earth and playing on an air hockey table that has veins, it's not very sci-fi. Urfolg is absolutely ridiculous, faster than any of the playable characters, and the AI is turned up to 11. Just like with any arcade boss, he constantly cheats and is all around just frustrating to deal with. Definitely the good old days of gaming, which were just BS boss fights meant to eat your quarters, except there's no quarters. It took me ages to actually get a win on him, eventually reverting to just having to hold the puck on my side as long as possible, and eventually I was able to get a win on him in a 7-6 score in sudden death. We do get an epilogue screen after saving the Earth. My playthrough was with Space Queen, so we got Space Queen gives peace on Earth. My power is from everyone, not myself. The future is unknown. Go on to glory. What a great epilogue that is. And some nice additional art of our character, followed by the credits. Now the music here is really nice. Better than it has any right to be, and it would sound perfect in any just random JRPG. And after the credits, we get the end screen and a high score leaderboard. Again, it's like this game was made with arcades in mind without ever actually reaching an arcade. A custom cabinet of air hockey would almost be pointless, but very impressive. The reviews of this game were not great. Finding an archived version of PlayStation Magazine UK, they gave it a 2 out of 10, and they called it good, uncomplicated fun for 5 minutes, which is a pretty accurate description. And while in 2025 I would give it slightly higher than a 2, it makes sense for the time frame for when it was released in 2003. I wasn't able to find any other places with a review back then, so it's pretty clear that most places just didn't bother with it, but I would believe that 2 out of 10 would have been a pretty common score for it to fall at. There isn't much depth to it. Granted, it was always a budget title, but even then, to get more than 1 to 3 hours out of this thing would be a pretty big stretch. It doesn't even have a speedrun scene to speak of. That's how little this game is explored or even played. The game, in my opinion, would land at about a 3 out of 10. It's playable, it exists, the art is nice, and you can get a good hour of enjoyment out of it, but nothing beyond that. If you just absolutely have to have it in your collection, it isn't expensive, landing at about $10 for a complete copy, or even just $20 for a brand new one. It was an interesting time looking into and playing what essentially is a completely forgotten game. It was likely made with the intention to be forgotten, given as a gift to some unsuspecting kid at Christmas and soon after discarded. That was ultimately the fate for most of the shovelware. But if you enjoyed this video, please subscribe.